When you stop chasing her, something unexpected happens. It's not silence, it's war. Not on the outside, but deep within her mind. She starts overthinking, over-analyzing, and over-feeling. You thought walking away would end the story, but to her, that's when the real story begins. Not with words, not with closure, but with a silence so sharp, it cuts through her certainty. You see, most men think silence means peace, but for a woman who's always held power through being desired, your stillness is not absence, it's disruption. It shakes the script she's trusted her whole life. Because when you stop chasing, her identity wobbles, and the question that haunts her most isn't, "Where did he go?" It's, "Why doesn't he need me to stay?" In this video, we're about to unlock what truly happens in her mind when the one thing she counted on, your pursuit, vanishes. It's not rejection, it's not closure, it's the beginning of obsession. Like this video and subscribe to Stoic Station, where we turn silence into strength and your discipline into power. Start this journey now. Drop a 1 if you've started pulling back, or a 2 if you felt her silence but never realized what it meant. Let's walk through this moment, step by step, because what happens next will redefine who holds the power, and just when she thinks she's watching you fade, she's about to realize you were never chasing, you were shifting the entire game. Let's dive in. Step 1, her power wobbles. Her silence isn't strength, it's a mask cracking when you stop chasing. For years, most men have been conditioned to believe that a woman's silence is rejection, that if she pulls away, the story is already over. That fear eats at you because you've been trained to equate her attention with your worth. But here's the truth. Silence doesn't always mean rejection. Sometimes, it's the very moment her confidence starts to shake. She has spent years carefully crafting her identity around the certainty of being desired. Every look, every comment, every message from men built the foundation of her self-image. It wasn't arrogance, it was reinforcement. Male attention became her mirror, the reflection that told her she was irresistible, magnetic, untouchable. And for a long time, it worked. She knew how to carry herself, how to command attention without ever asking for it. Her power was never in giving, it was in pulling others in. But when you stopped chasing, something shifted. Your indifference didn't feel like neutrality, it felt like a verdict. Suddenly the ground beneath her steady performance wobbled. The question that stings her deepest isn't, "Why did he leave?" It's, "What does my silence mean now if it no longer controls him?" That is where her ego collides with loss aversion. Psychologists call it the fear of losing what we've always taken for granted. For her, your pursuit was the baseline, the proof that she still had it. When that disappears, the mind twists inward with questions. Am I losing my edge? Did I do something wrong? Have I miscalculated? This isn't about love, it's about identity. A woman who has always been the flame, with men drawn like moths, suddenly watches one man walk away unfazed. That isn't just unusual, it's disruptive. It tears at the script she has always trusted. And the more she tries to reassure herself that she still has power, the more the silence you hold begins to whisper a different truth. Maybe she doesn't. That whisper is louder than any argument you could have sent, because it comes from within her. Here's where most men stumble. They see her discomfort and rush back in, desperate to reassure her, desperate to silence their own fears by proving they're still wanted. But in doing so, they give back the very power that silence was beginning to shift. What you must understand is this. Your silence is not rejection, it's discipline. It's the refusal to let impulse and insecurity drive your choices. It's the act of reclaiming ground you didn't even realize you had surrendered. The first shift, then, is not about her losing you. It's about you regaining yourself. For the first time, you're no longer at the mercy of her responses. no longer dancing to the rhythm of her validation. You're choosing stillness as strength, clarity as armor, restraint as power. And when that happens, the balance between you changes forever. The game she thought she was playing begins to crumble, not because you defeated her, but because you mastered yourself. That is the silent power shift, and it's only the beginning. Step 2. She becomes the watcher. You think she's gone. She's watching more closely than ever. That's the trap most men fall into, believing that her silence is disinterest, that her distance is dismissal, that the story has ended. But in reality, the opposite is true. Detachment is not departure. Her silence does not mean she's forgotten you. More often than not, it means she's shifted roles. She's no longer the performer, she's the observer. What you must understand is this: unpredictability is magnetic. When you break the pattern of pursuit, when you no longer play the role of the predictable man responding to every cue, something powerful happens. You become scarce. And scarcity in psychology increases value. Your absence is no longer emptiness. It becomes intrigue. It creates a vacuum in her mind that she cannot leave alone. Suddenly, your every move, every pause, every moment of stillness becomes a clue she tries to decipher. That's why she starts watching from the shadows. She checks your online presence, scrolling through your posts, noticing the hours you're active, reading between the lines of your silence. She pays attention to timestamps, to who you might be interacting with, to the subtleties most men assume go unnoticed. And the truth is, women rarely miss anything. They are intuitive by nature, trained through instinct and experience to read signals others overlook. When you stop chasing, you don't disappear. You become a puzzle. And puzzles are irresistible to the human mind. The mystery you now embody becomes the very thing she cannot let go of. But here's where the dynamic grows dangerous for you if you don't see it clearly. Mystery doesn't just hold her attention, it feeds her obsession. Her pride tells her she should be in control. Her ego insists that she should be the one holding the strings. And yet, here you are, unmoved, unreadable, not flinching at her silence or bending to her rhythm. That contradiction gnaws at her because it dismantles the script she's always trusted. The flame draws the moth. But what happens when the moth doesn't move? The flame begins to flicker in confusion. This is where many men sabotage themselves. They catch wind of her observation and feel the need to perform again, to post for her, to react, to send a message just to prove they're still there. But every time you do that, you hand back the very power your silence created. You break the mystery. You show that her gaze still controls you. The wiser path is to hold your frame, to remain steady in your stillness, to live so fully in your own purpose, your own discipline, your own orbit, that her watching no longer matters. Because it's not about ignoring her, it's about becoming a man so self-directed that her observation only confirms what she already fears. She no longer has the script. You're no longer predictable. And here's the viral truth that will shake her deepest. She isn't watching because she doesn't care. She's watching because she can't understand you anymore. And when a woman can't predict you, she can't control you. That's when curiosity turns into obsession, and obsession becomes the proof that your silence was never weakness. It was the first sign of power, and the longer you hold it, the more that power grows. Step 3. The phantom rivals. The moment you stop chasing, she doesn't think you've gone still. She assumes you've gone elsewhere. That's the reflex most men never see coming. In her mind, your calm detachment can't possibly mean discipline. No, it must mean distraction. She tells herself you're not absent, you're occupied. And not just occupied, but invested in someone else, another woman, a phantom rival. This is the part that stings her pride the most. because women rarely accept the idea that a man would walk away simply to build peace within himself. That narrative doesn't soothe her ego. Instead, she reaches for the one that does. If you're no longer orbiting her, you must be revolving around another sun, and once that thought lodges itself in her mind, it doesn't leave quietly. It gnaws, it festers, it rewrites every memory of your last interactions. She replays how quickly you stopped texting, how confidently you withdrew, how unbothered you seemed. In her world, men don't just vanish, they get replaced. This is where psychology cuts deep. Cognitive dissonance tells us that when reality contradicts belief, the mind creates stories to bridge the gap. Her belief, she's irreplaceable. The reality, you walked away without flinching. The story she invents, there must be someone better pulling your attention. And the irony is, that story hurts her more than the truth ever could, because even if there's no one else, the possibility that there could be is enough to spark insecurity she never planned to face. And so, the rivals appear. Sometimes they're real, sometimes they're imaginary, sometimes they're just shadows she paints onto other women in your orbit. Suddenly, every name she sees near yours, every vague interaction, every unknown face becomes competition. Not because you've given her proof, but because her pride won't allow the possibility that you would simply choose solitude over her presence. That would mean she wasn't unforgettable. That would mean her hold was never as unshakable as she thought. This is when her behavior begins to shift in ways you can actually see. The posts become louder, the selfies sharper, the captions carry weight. It's not happiness, it's performance. She dresses for war, not warmth. She puts on a show, not because she's moving on, but because she's competing with an opponent who may not even exist. It's an invisible battlefield where she fights for relevance, where her every move is meant to scream, "I'm still the standard, I'm still the storm, I'm still the one no man replaces easily." And here's where most men misstep. They see these performances and mistake them for genuine joy. They fold, they react, they chase again, thinking she's slipping away. But all you've really seen is her pride on stage, desperate to outshine ghosts. The true test of your discipline is to recognize that her show is not for herself, it's for you. It's bait to see if you'll bite. Your task is simple but not easy. Hold steady. Live your life so fully that you don't even notice the performance. Because the man who doesn't flinch in the face of her phantom rivals proves something far more powerful than attraction. He proves sovereignty. He shows that his energy is too precious to be baited, too scarce to be pulled into games. And scarcity is the one force that turns her fear into respect. Here's the shift she never wanted to face. When you stopped chasing, you weren't just the man who walked away. You became the man who had the option to chase and chose not to. And that choice, more than anything, raises your value in her eyes. Because now, your silence is not absence. It's proof of discernment. And discernment, to a woman who thrives on attention, is the rarest, most intimidating form of power. Step 4. Her silent tests. Every vague post, every delayed reply, every sudden cold shoulder, it's not random, it's a test. And here's where most men fail. They mistake her silence for absence, when in truth, it's performance with a purpose. She's not gone, she's probing, she's waiting to see if you'll break first. When a woman feels the grip of her influence slipping, she rarely confronts it directly. That would mean admitting vulnerability. Instead, she does something far more strategic. She creates space, then watches if you'll fill it. She delays her replies. She posts a story with a song lyric that feels like a dagger meant for you. She suddenly goes cold in a conversation and pretends it's nothing. Every gesture is calculated, not to hurt you, but to measure you. Will you panic? Will you lean back in? Will you chase again just to reassure yourself that she still cares? This is how psychology and instinct intertwine. Intermittent reinforcement, the same principle that keeps gamblers hooked, shows us that unpredictability creates the strongest attachment. When she withholds, when she goes silent, she's pulling that lever, knowing that many men can't endure the uncertainty. They crack, they send the message, they react to the post, they take the bait, and the moment they do, the balance resets. She wins back the upper hand, not the relationship, just the emotional certainty that her presence still lingers in his mind. But what happens when you don't take the bait? That's where the test becomes a mirror. Instead of proving your weakness, your silence reflects her fear. She sees that the tricks which once commanded attention now fall flat. The power she once had to provoke a reaction no longer works. And that realization cuts deeper than anything you could ever say. This is where your Stoic discipline must come alive. A man rooted in self-mastery does not flinch when tested. He doesn't allow his mood to be dictated by another's performance. He recognizes the test for what it is, a probe, a signal, a question hidden in silence. Do I still matter to you? And the strength is not in answering. The strength is in holding steady, in letting your life answer for you. A man who keeps moving, who stays grounded in purpose, communicates something far more powerful than any text ever could: immunity. And immunity is her greatest fear. Because she has built her identity on the belief that her beauty, her charm, her calculated silence would always be enough to keep a man tethered. But when you remain composed, when her silence no longer commands your reaction, she is forced to confront a truth she never prepared for. She may no longer have influence over you. Of course, she may try to escalate. She might flirt publicly. She might act as though she's moved on. But these aren't declarations. They're diagnostics. They are experiments designed to see what still moves you, what still breaks you, what still pulls you back. And when nothing works, when her carefully curated silence and performance fall flat, the feeling that consumes her isn't power, it's irrelevance. And irrelevance, for a woman who once thrived on control, is devastating. That's why you must remain unshaken. Because the moment you fold, she learns her influence still reigns. But the moment you don't, you teach a lesson she won't forget. That your peace is no longer for sale, and her silence is no longer the currency that buys your attention. So remember this: the test is never really about her silence. It's about your strength. And when you stop reacting, when you hold firm, when you choose discipline over impulse, the script flips completely. She's no longer testing you, she's testing herself. And that shift is where your true power begins. Step 5. Her fear of losing control. Her greatest fear is not losing you, it's losing control over you. That may sound harsh, but if you look closely, it's the truth. For a woman who has built her confidence and identity on her ability to influence a man's emotions, control has always been the anchor. Not domination, not aggression, but subtle authority. The delayed reply, the perfectly timed silence, the playful withdrawal that once sent you spiraling with questions. Those were her silent weapons, and for years they worked. But when you stop chasing, when you remain composed in the face of her absence, something unfamiliar creeps in. Helplessness, because the tricks that once lit you up now fall flat. The levers she used to pull no longer produce the same reaction. And in her mind, that's not just frustrating, it's terrifying. This is where the psychology of loss aversion strikes hardest. People fear losing control more than they value gaining it. For her, your predictable response used to be proof that she mattered. It reassured her that she could still set the tempo, that she still dictated the rhythm of the connection. But now, your silence doesn't just resist, it rewrites the entire dynamic. Instead of orbiting around her, you've become your own center of gravity. Instead of chasing, you've chosen calm self-possession. That's when the panic sets in. She may not show it publicly. She may still project an image of composure, even indifference. But behind the screen, in the moments no one sees, she refreshes the page, waiting for a message you're not sending. She stares longer in the mirror, not to admire her reflection, but to search for answers. Why isn't it working anymore? Why doesn't he fold like the others did? Why can't I feel the same grip I once had? That is the quiet fear, recognizing that the language she trusted to control now fails to move you. And make no mistake, helplessness to someone who has always relied on control feels like drowning, not with noise, not with drama, but with silence. She realizes that her presence doesn't dictate your emotions, her absence doesn't derail your peace, and her performance no longer bends your focus. And that realization isn't just a loss of control, it's a collapse of the very framework she's lived by. This is where your discipline as a man becomes crucial. Most men, when they sense her slipping, rush back to reassure her. They mistake her subtle panic for love, for vulnerability, for a chance to save her. But understand this clearly. The moment you do that, you return the control she's terrified of losing. You validate her fear and soothe it, but at the cost of your own power. The Stoics taught that mastery is not found in bending the world to your will, but in refusing to be bent by its storms. That's your role here. Not to prove anything, not to argue, not to react, but to remain unmoved. To let your silence speak for itself. Because the more you stand grounded, the more her fear deepens, not because she's losing you, but because she realizes she no longer defines you. And that is the true power shift. When she sees that her beauty couldn't shake you, that her silence couldn't provoke you, that her games couldn't summon you back, she is forced to confront the truth. Her control has slipped away. And in that moment, you don't just reclaim your strength, you redefine the story. She is no longer the gravitational pull, you are. And nothing unsettles her more than that. Step 6. She questions her worth. When your silence holds, she no longer questions you, she begins to question herself. And that is the moment where the entire dynamic flips, because now the battle isn't between you and her. It's between her and the reflection she sees in the mirror. For years, her worth was measured through the lens of attention, compliments, stares, messages, the constant hum of validation. They were the applause that reinforced the identity she built. She didn't need to ask, "Am I valuable?" Because the world, and especially men, answered it for her every day. That feedback loop wasn't shallow, it was survival. It confirmed she was still magnetic, still unforgettable, still powerful. But your silence disrupts that loop. Suddenly there's no applause, no confirmation, no proof. And in that void, doubt creeps in. It doesn't arrive like a thunderstorm, it arrives like fog, subtle and suffocating. She replays every interaction with you, analyzing the way she smiled, the words she chose, the moments she pulled back, wondering, did I misread him? Did I lose my edge? Why didn't it work? The very charm she believed would always guarantee pursuit suddenly looks fragile, and that realization rattles her more than rejection ever could. Psychology calls this cognitive dissonance, the painful gap between who she believes she is and the reality your silence suggests. She believed she was the exception, the one no man could resist. But every day you don't reach out, every moment you remain unbothered, that belief collides with a new possibility. Maybe she wasn't the exception after all. That thought doesn't just bruise her ego, it pierces her identity. And here's the irony, she may still look strong on the outside, She might post photos that scream confidence, write captions that hint at joy, surround herself with friends to project abundance. But those are performances for the world. Behind closed doors, in the stillness of solitude, the questions echo louder. Why wasn't I enough to make him stay? If my beauty, my charm, my presence couldn't hold him, then what does that say about me? That is the storm you never see, the unraveling that happens in silence. This is where your role as a man becomes crystal clear. The temptation will rise to rush back in, to reassure her, to soften the blow of your discipline. But understand this: her journey of questioning is not yours to interrupt. If you step in to soothe, you rob both of you of the lesson. Because your silence isn't cruelty, it's clarity. It's the boundary that forces both of you to see yourselves without distortion. For her, it means facing the reality that attention is not the same as value. For you, it means realizing that peace comes not from being chosen, but from choosing yourself. The Stoics spoke often about detachment, not as indifference but as freedom. Freedom from needing to control what is outside of you. Freedom from allowing another's behavior to dictate your worth. That's the freedom your silence represents. And when you live in that, you no longer crumble under the weight of someone else's validation. So here's the truth that completes the shift. Her silence is not the ending, it is the mirror. And while she stares into it, questioning her worth, you must stand in yours, unshaken, unbent, sovereign. Because the man who can withstand silence without folding has already won the only battle that matters, the one within himself. And that victory is the reason her world wobbles, even if she never admits it. In the end, your silence is not a game, it's a mirror. Step by step, it forces her to confront what she never had to question before: her power, her control, her identity, even her worth. At first, she wobbles, then she watches. Soon she invents rivals, tests you, fears losing control, and finally questions herself. But all along, the real shift was never about her. It was about you. Because when you stop chasing, you stop bleeding energy into someone else's orbit. You reclaim it. You become scarce, disciplined, sovereign. And that's the paradox. The less you need her attention, the more powerful you become in her eyes. But the true reward isn't her obsession. It's your freedom. A man who no longer folds under silence is a man who has mastered himself. And that is the power she can never take away. If this message grounded you, take a moment, like this video and subscribe to Stoic Station, where we turn silence into strength and doubt into discipline. Now, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. I choose myself. Because in the end, that's the shift that matters most. Not whether she comes back, but whether you stand unshaken.